These are the books that I would like to finish before this year finishes me. And I'm going to tell you about them. Hello, my name is Jack Edwards. Welcome back to Jack in the Books. Welcome back to my second channel. Let's talk about this very ambitious pile of books that I'm hoping that I am going to be able to read before this year ends. Firstly, this is a book that I've already started. I'm kind of halfway through this one, so this is an achievable goal. I think it's always good to start with something we can actually do. This is More Days at the Morisaki Bookshop, and it's actually the sequel to the book Days at the Morisaki Bookshop. Good thing we got Sherlock Holmes over here to figure that one out. But basically, this is the follow-up. The first book is very cozy. It's all about slowing down, not taking life with too much pressure, I guess. It's like not putting too much pressure on yourself to have everything figured out. And that book just landed in my lap at the exact time that I needed it, when I was just feeling a little overwhelmed with everything, feeling like I should know what I'm doing and where I'm going. And that book is about a girl who moves in with her uncle. She lives in his bookshop, or like above his bookshop. And so she works at the store with him. So it's very cozy. But he offers her some really amazing advice. And he says to her, you don't have to have it all figured out. You don't have to know where you're going or what you're doing at all times. You know, right now, think of yourself as a little boat in a harbor, just taking a break from your various journeys. And I think that was very moving for me at the time. Maybe on another day, I wouldn't have appreciated it as much, but just when I happened to read it, it just scratched an itch for me. Like, I just needed to hear those words at that time. And I guess that's the beauty of fiction, that sometimes a character is experiencing something that you are also going through, and you don't even realize it until you see them overcome it or vocalize what's wrong. And I think that reading widely equips you with the vocabulary to articulate what you are experiencing, what you're going through. And I think this book just did that for me at the time. So loved that. And now this is the follow-up. This is the sequel. So we return to the Morisaki bookshop. The main character, who we followed in the first book, has moved out from the bookshop, and she now has a boyfriend. And it's kind of like the next phase in her life. But again, it's very, very cozy. It's written in a pretty straightforward way. Like, I wouldn't describe this as super poetic, though there are some useful and interesting metaphors and analogies. Generally, the text is pretty straightforward to read. So it's a pretty quick, easy one, and kind of ideal for the end of the year, when I think, again, we start to put that pressure on ourselves of like New Year's resolutions. And it is a time where we start to think about what we haven't achieved in the previous 365 days versus what we would like to achieve in the next 365 days. And while I think that setting resolutions can be a good thing, it's also worth having a little reminder, sometimes in the shape of a book, that where you are is okay too. And it's fine if this year was slightly slower, or you slowed down the pace, or you're currently feeling a little stagnant. That's okay. It might just be part of the recharging process so that you can hit the ground running at a later point. But yeah, that book, the first book, really works well for me, and so I'm hoping this one is going to as well. Basically, this series is therapy, and I'm very grateful for that. Next, we have Mammoth by Eva Baltazar. So I've read her two other books, Boulder and Permafrost. This is the third in that series. It feels odd to call it a series because essentially they are standalones, and I actually read them out of order. So I read Boulder first, even though it's technically the second book in the series, and it works completely as a standalone. I didn't need the context of the first book at all because they're not really linked. I suppose what links the three books is the themes. So they're all about kind of lesbian women feeling a little disenchanted by society and what they see around them and the expectations of them, and they're sort of subverting, in a way, what is expected of them. So Boulder is about a woman thinking about childbirth and motherhood and whether she wants to be a mother, and also commitment, you know. So she is experiencing the situation where the person that she loves wants to have a baby, even though she doesn't. And so basically she has to choose between being an unwilling mother or being alone, because if she chose not to embark on that journey of motherhood, she may lose the person that she loves. And so that's a really interesting dynamic and introspective journey. And then Permafrost is kind of a meditation on life and suicide and death. And then this book, Mammoth, is, well, let me tell you what it's about. Mammoth's protagonist is a disenchanted young lesbian. She's inexperienced, irritated by life, eager to gestate, and determined to strip everything else down to essentials. She seduces men at random, swaps her urban habitat for an isolated farmhouse, befriends a shepherd, nurses lambs, battles stray cats, waits tables, cleans houses, and dabbles in sex work, all in pursuit of life in the raw. This small bomb of a novel, not remotely pastoral, builds to a howling crescendo of social despair, leaving us at the mercy of Eva Baltazar's wild voice. I feel like because it's the last in this little series, this kind of project that Eva Baltazar worked on, I think it's going to go out with a bang. Permafrost certainly ended with, in fact, all of them so far have ended with a kind of sucker punch. So I feel like this is going to leave me shook to my very core, and I can't wait for that. It's by Eva Baltazar and translated from the Catalan by Julia Sanchez. Okay, should I do some festive books? I have The Christmas Tree Farm. I read The Pumpkin Spice Cafe, and I've never cared so little for the fate of two people. Like, I was like, I don't care if these people live or die. It wasn't really a life or death situation kind of book. It was more like, will they end up together or not? But it's pretty obvious that they will. And so for me, I didn't get much from that book, but it was great for the season. It's kind of all vibes because The Pumpkin Spice Cafe is just like the ultimate autumn book. This one I feel could be the ultimate Christmas book. So they're set in a little town called Dream Harbor, and there are just small town romances. I think there's also one called the Cinnamon Bun Bookshop. You know, it's kind of formulaic, it's kind of cheesy, but sometimes we need a little charcuterie board in our lives, and Christmas is the time for cheese. I feel like this is going to feel like a Hallmark movie in a book, and so if that's what you're looking for, maybe check out The Christmas Tree Farm. Honestly, it is what I'm looking for at this time of year. I do want something that is just easy and light and washes over me, and I don't have to engage my brain at all, and that is exactly what this is, which sometimes is necessary. So Kira North hates Christmas, which is unfortunate since she just bought a Christmas tree farm in a town that's too cute for its own good. See, do you know what I mean? It is giving like Lindsay Lohan Christmas movie. Bennett Ellis is on vacation in Dream Harbor, trying to take a break from both his life and his constant desire to always fix things. But somehow, fate finds Ben trapped by a blanket of snow at Kira's farm. What are the chances of that? And despite her grinchiest first impressions, with the glow of the fairy lights twinkling in the trees and the promise of a warming hot chocolate, maybe, just maybe, these two lost souls will have a Christmas they'll remember forever. You know what I mean? Like, we already know what's going to happen. Even just from reading the blurb, you've basically been told the entire plot of the book. But sometimes that's what you want. I have some other Christmas books here too. This one I'm very intrigued by. This is The Wood at Midwinter by Susanna Clarke. Now, Susanna Clarke wrote this huge mammoth of a book, if we were to hark back to a previous title. She wrote this mammoth of a novel called Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, and it's this really thick volume. She disappears for like a decade and then comes back with this tiny slim thing called Piranesi, which you might recognize from the fact that I talk about it constantly. I love the book Piranesi. I think it's so brilliant. And this is her kind of take on a Christmas story. I feel like this is the literary equivalent of a pop star releasing a Christmas song. Like, this is Susanna Clarke's Santa Tell Me. So this is The Wood at Midwinter. I think it's also got some gorgeous illustrations in here as well. It's very, very short. This is one you can like polish off in an hour, and I'm like saving it for the perfect hour. I'm putting up my Christmas tree today, and I think as soon as that's up, I've got a hot date with this book. It is described as enchanting and enchanted. It's about a 19-year-old girl who has an unusual gift. She can talk to animals and trees, and she is only ever happy when she is walking in the woods. One snowy afternoon, out with her dogs and Apple the pig, she encounters a blackbird and a fox. As darkness falls, a strange figure appears in their midst, and the path of her life is changed forever. So that is The Wood at Midwinter. Before I tell you about the next book, I wanted to let you know that today's video is very kindly brought to you by Squarespace. Squarespace is the all-in-one platform for building a website or an online brand, and the best news is you don't need any coding experience. You don't need to be an expert web developer, because Squarespace has everything all in one place and a series of amazing templates which you can customize. There's also AI web development tools, so you can bring in all the best features of Squarespace in one place. And they have the ability to use AI for search engine optimization, meaning that once you've created your website, it will appear in search results, and therefore your hard effort has not gone to waste. If all of this sounds good, you can head to squarespace.com right now for a free trial, and then use my code jackinthebooks at squarespace.com/jackinthebooks to get 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Thank you so much to Squarespace for working with me on this series. Oh, I think that this is a Christmas book, but I was sent it in the post and it's wrapped up. So should we open it together? I remember being emailed asking if I wanted it and I was like, yes, please, absolutely. And they sent it wrapped up. So this is The Book for Christmas by Selma Lagerlof. But what should I do on Christmas night if nobody has given me a book? In this enchanting selection of winter stories, the beloved writer Selma Lagerlof, winner of the Nobel Prize in 1909, weaves together magic and miracles, Swedish folklore and timeless fables, darkness and light, which next to a fire and some Christmas lights with a little hot chocolate, it's just going to be perfect. Some more Christmas books. Now, this one is kind of about a disastrous Christmas. It's called Christmas at Cold Comfort Farm. It's by Stella Gibbons, who is described as the Jane Austen of the 20th century. Christmas at Cold Comfort Farm begins with a festive uproar at the farm. Adam Lambsbreath hands out unpleasant gifts. Grandmother Doom presciently comments on the turkey. Would it be a vulture? It would be more fitting. And the Starcadders are half crazed as they search for the symbols of ill luck within the Christmas pudding. Reuben finds the bad sixpence, which means he will lose all his money during the year. But which poor soul will get the coffin nail? So I kind of feel like this is a fun alternative Christmas book where it's not all gingerbread houses and Christmas puddings. It is a little bit more sinister, I guess, or things are going a bit more wrong. And ultimately, isn't that also part of the charm of Christmas, is that we have the idea of the tradition of what the perfect Christmas is or should be, and it never really ends up being that. No Christmas really is perfect, and that's kind of what makes it perfect, especially when it comes to spending time with your family. I think that disasters often happen. So this is Christmas at Cold Comfort Farm. I feel like this is going to be potentially a new favorite winter book for me. Speaking of which, I also have Winter by Ali Smith. Winter, bleak, frosty wind, earth as iron, water as stone, as the old song goes. When four people, strangers and family, converge on a 15-bedroom home in Cornwall for Christmas, will there be enough room for everyone? Ali Smith wrote this series called The Seasonal Quartet. So there are books for autumn, winter, spring, and summer. You'll hear me talking about these a lot at the moment because I just read Autumn and loved it. It was so interesting. It was autumnal vibes, but it was also about Brexit and the state of the nation after a referendum like that showed a lot of people's cards, and I think made us in the UK really start to question the rhetoric that had been used during that time and how there were a lot of false promises, and also how people who you cared about and loved voted in a way that you wouldn't have imagined. The vote was split. It was very, very even, and so I think that was quite shocking to people who, for a lot of us, thought that we would remain in the EU. So that was a really interesting book to read, and I'm intrigued by this next one in the series. So Autumn is the first one in the series, so I'm trying to read them in the corresponding seasons in order. Starting with Autumn and now moving on to Winter, Splendid, Fierce and Unsettling, a book that makes one think. And finally, a book that I'm kind of saving for that between Christmas and New Year period where I can really sink my teeth into something and have no commitments at all. There is nothing on my to-do list, just reading. I'm saving this book, which I know people absolutely love. I've heard so many people raving about Mongrel by Hanako Footman. This is about three women. It's set between Tokyo and London. Shifting between three interweaving narratives, Mongrel reveals a tangled web of desire, isolation, belonging, and ultimately hope. Should I read you the whole blurb? It sounds so good. I feel like if this doesn't make you want to read it, I don't know what will. So the first character we have is May, who has lost her Japanese mother at age 6. Growing up in suburban Surrey, she yearns to fit in, suppressing not only her heritage, but her growing desire for her best friend, Fran. Then we have Yuki. Yuki leaves the Japanese countryside to pursue her dream of becoming a concert violinist in London. Far from home and in an unfamiliar city, she finds herself caught up in the charms of her older teacher. Then finally, we have Haruka. Haruka attempts to navigate Tokyo's nightlife and all of its many vices, working as a hostess in the city's sex district. She grieves a mother who hid so many secrets from her, until finally, one of those secrets comes to light. And the reviews on the cover are what sold this to me. A brilliant explosion of writing and storytelling. This feels like reading an Oscar-winning film. Potentially, this is an opportunity to be ahead of the curve. I feel like this is inevitably going to be adapted into a movie at some point, and so I want to be able to have said I've read it before that. And that will be such a great experience to see this brought to life after reading it on the screen. It's by Hanako Footman, who I met when I was in Bali last month at a book festival, and she was absolutely lovely. She is a British-Japanese actor and author living in London. Mongrel is her debut novel. Heart-shatteringly visceral and precise, this compulsive, engrossing, and gorgeous debut will utterly consume you. That's all I want from a book. That's all I want right now. Something to just really get lost in, and that is super immersive and vivid, that to the point where it feels like a movie. Tick, 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 tick. That's my entire shopping list of what I'm looking for in a book right now. So that is on my December reading list. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know what books you would like to read before the end of the year. What are those books that have been, you know, niggling away at you, that you've been waiting to read, that have been sitting on your bedside table collecting dust, you know, and you've been like, I'm going to get around to that one. I'm going to get around to that one before the end of the year. What's that book for you? When are you planning on reading it? Let me know in the comment section down below. Thank you so much for watching this video. All the best. Stay in touch. Have a wonderful day. And bye-bye.